Times laughed in this chapter, 1. Total laughs in this book, 1. Hello and welcome to Procrastination Point's video Snark. If you came here because you thought that this was an audiobook, please stick around and maybe learn some reading and listening comprehension skills. I read books, discuss what went wrong and how they can possibly be fixed. I'm continuing my read-through of Lights Out by Navessa Allen. At the first video, go check out the others. Links are posted below. Chapter 13. When Allie tries to hand over the samples to Veronica, the lab tech, she's kind of floored that there isn't some kind of magic button that the techs press that instantly spits out results. I seriously don't know what she expected. She works in the system. She knows how it works. Once again, this isn't remotely funny. It's mainly cringy with how out of touch that Allie is. Allie tries to get the samples back, but Veronica asks what this is about. They then randomly derail everything and start talking about how everybody thinks that one of the janitors works for the mob before getting back on track. Veronica agrees to do this for Allie because she's such a good friend. She also talks Allie through wanting things for herself, but never once mentions setting healthy boundaries. Ugh. As she leaves, she gets a text from Josh, her stalker, asking how mad she is about the tracker. 1 being we need a day or two to cool off, and 10 being we need to start drafting a joint custody agreement for Fred. That isn't even your cat! Jeez, what is this man's obsession with the cat? It's weird in a bad way. Allie tells him that she's at a 3 anger-wise, but then immediately tells the readers that she's having serious doubts, that she needs time away from him to consider all of this. But I want more from the man who had A, broken into my house, B, broken into my car, and C, was actively stalking me, had to be the height of stupidity. Again, it's great that this book acknowledges all of this, but look me in the eyes and tell me that you think that she's going to make the wise decision to stop all of this. However, her opinion is that since he gave her such a good O, then literally everything else pales in comparison. It hasn't even been 2 paragraphs. This goes on for another half a page before Josh, her stalker, apologizes. She tries to reassure him that she's just trying to protect herself, yet refuses to admit that he should probably leave her alone. He promises to give her time and space, but I'm only willing to allow you a few days. After that, I'm coming for you, baby, whether you're ready or not. And until then, I'll be watching. So basically, she can decide what she wants to do. But in the end, whatever she chooses doesn't matter because Josh is going to have her, willing or not. Blech. However, from Allie's perspective, this was the correct thing to say since it gets her going. Like, girl, you do you, but half of this chapter so far has been her fretting about her safety, so excuse me when I say that she's as stupid as you can possibly get. She goes back to work, but later watches his latest video. As she does, she can't help but compare his movements to the things he's done to her in the bedroom. His video had another caption. I nearly dropped the phone when I read it, my laughter so instantaneous that I choked on the air. It said, Mommy and Daddy time. How was he able to be so fucking hot and funny at the same time? Am I missing some joke here? Or is this about the cat? What is his freaking obsession with her cat? And then we're subjected to the thirsty comments from this video, as if reading about Allie's obsession isn't bad enough. Do we also have to read the insanity of random strangers online? My pager went off and I was glad for the excuse to get out of there before the next kink I developed was a breeding one. Honestly, if this is the author's take on stalker kink, I'm terrified to find out what her take on a breeding kink would be. And I say this as somebody who has a breeding kink. Some time passes, and it's like, oh look, the author does know how to skip over unimportant stuff. Or rather, she skips over the stuff that doesn't directly relate to Allie moping about her stalker. As she goes around and does her work, she stops to ask her co-worker Tanya why nobody's treating a man sitting off by himself. Tanya explains that it's a man who was literally caught raping somebody but who walked because his family is loaded. This results in nearly 2 pages of discussion, which is kind of frustrating to me. We get it. Please move on. Allie eventually volunteers to be the one to treat this man. For obvious reasons, none of the all-female nurses that shift wanted anything to do with him. She goes despite the protests from the other nurses, as well as Josh calling her to tell her not to do dumb stuff. At this point, I had a really long conversation on if the hospital is obligated to provide treatment with my husband. He is under the impression that the hospital is obligated to treat everybody, no matter what, and that the law says that people are innocent until proven guilty. However, I rejected his offer to include his brother, the medical doctor, in on this conversation. Anyway, Allie starts to treat him. She's cold and professional and tries hard not to respond to anything he says, but then he starts to explain about how he'd been minding his own business in a bar when the brother of the girl he'd allegedly raped tracked him down so that he could beat him up. As he continues on about the crime he allegedly committed, he can see that it's starting to affect Allie. He starts to get aroused. Mercifully, this guy isn't the love interest, and Allie is so turned off by the entire thing. He grabs her, but Allie pointedly tells him that she isn't impressed with the size of his eggplant, and that she'd like to see him against a woman who is actually awake this time. The creep screams for help, but security is having none of his nonsense. He's apparently done this before. I updated my husband about this after having read it, especially the part about how this man had a history of harassing the nurses, and security was well aware of what this man had done previously. My husband seriously had no clue about what a hospital would do in this situation, and again encouraged me to ask my brother-in-law, which I don't do because he's busy being an actual doctor. The man tries to demand that he wants one of the other nurses to treat him instead. However, Allie notes the fact that the other nurse looks like the woman that he'd allegedly raped. The nurses refuse to treat him. Tanya follows Allie down the hall and asks what the creeper said to her. Then Allie is called into HR, although she's not worried about any real punishment. This is confirmed when the HR lady is like, honestly, same. Allie goes back to work, but then she has a panic attack when a car crash victim comes in who reminds her too much of her mother, because Allie's mother apparently died in the same way. Times left in this chapter, 0. Total left in this book, 0. Chapter 14. Since this chapter is obviously from Josh's point of view, we're subjected to his thoughts following all of that. The only consolation is that we don't have to read about the same scene from his point of view, which is something, I suppose. But his thoughts on the matter go on for way too long. We got that the guy was creepy and scary and really shook Allie up, but she's awesome for dealing with it in a professional way. Let's move on, please. He continues to watch her, and I'm so freaking bored with this. Move on already. At some point, Tanya walks up to Allie and the two of them appear to have a heart-to-heart. Josh has already told us that there aren't mics on the security camera, so he doesn't know what they're talking about. But he's of the opinion that when he wasn't paying attention, a patient died. As if Allie still couldn't be on edge because of what happened earlier. Despite his promise that he'd give her some time, he goes over to see her when she gets off from that shift. He intentionally doesn't bring his usual mask, but he does bring a balaclava instead. He figures that he's going to be there for a while and would rather not be itchy and sweaty in his main mask. The sound of my voice brought me up short, my unmodulated voice. Shit. In my haste to leave the apartment, I'd forgotten the modulator was stitched into my mask. How is this? I asked, purring for dropping my voice as low as I comfortably could. I'm Batman. This is probably the first time that I even smiled at this book, but it's not enough to elicit an actual laugh. He sets out to make some tea for Allie when she gets out from the shower, but she apparently hadn't realized that he'd broken in again and screams bloody murder when she sees him, although a big part of her fear is the fact that he's not in his usual mask and also without the voice modulator. Allie tends to the hand he burned with the tea on accident and makes a joke that at least it wasn't the hand she stabbed. Up close, she can see how emotionally exhausted that she is. She hugs him and tells him, "It's my mom," to which he comments that her mom is dead. Allie is obviously not happy to be reminded that her boyfriend is a creep, yet she still refuses to do anything about his poor behavior. Allie explains that she was driving when her mom died. She was trying to learn how to drive stick, and the car stalled in the middle of the intersection. Allie panicked and hit the gas instead of the brake. They got T-boned by a truck, and Mom got a pipe through her chest. Josh obviously thinks that her failure to save her mother is why she's so intent on saving everybody else now. Allie hates how she wasn't able to help the woman who came into the hospital earlier. You shouldn't. Re-traumatizing yourself isn't the answer. It's been almost 10 years. I shouldn't still be traumatized. I pressed my fabric-covered lips to her temple. There isn't a time limit on grief or trauma. Thank you for this. Josh talks her through her survivor's guilt, that there were so many things that went wrong. Mom encouraging Allie to be out on the road before she was ready. The driver for not swerving. The blame is not solely on Allie's shoulders. He then tells her that he bumped her vacation up to start right now, because she's obviously in dire need of a break from everything. I took a vacation too. I thought that we could spend some quality time together as a family. You, me, our maladjusted son who just scooted his butt across the carpet behind you. You aren't a family. You've been romantically involved with Allie for like a week at this point. This had real long-term potential, and I hadn't been deluding myself when I formed my plan to make her fall in love with me. Bitch, what the fuck did I just say? You don't even know her all that well. Reading about this stuff in her life is completely different from actually having a conversation with her. They then talk about the rapist from the hospital. Josh said that he looked into the man and basically found the exact same stuff that the nurses told the readers in the previous chapter, that he has a long history of assaulting women and enough money to make all of it disappear. Both agree that the creep should die, but neither really wants to go to jail because of that loser. But Allie says she wishes Josh had come barging in and beaten up the creep, that it would have been hot. Josh wants to continue to probe into her feelings about what happened to her that day, but Allie disrobes and sits on his lap, explaining that she's done talking about things, which I suppose is fair enough considering the day she said. She tells him not to hold back on her right now. They agree on no safe words, which, Danger Will Robinson! 3 rules, guys! This is literally rule number 1. I left her to grab my bag and ensure Fred was still minding his business in his felt house and hadn't stuck into her room while we'd been distracted. What I was about to do to his mother, no child should see. He's a cat! Josh then grabs a big knife, stabs it into a mattress, and tells Allie to ride the knife, which, okay, I guess. Times left in this chapter, 0. Total laughs in this book, 0. Chapter 15. My heart beat against my ribs like it was trying to break free from my chest. Holy shit. For a second there I thought Josh was going to kill me. I needed to remember that this man took me at my word. Online, I'd begged him to break in, and he had. Now I asked for dark, and he was delivering. I should have known it would come at a cost. Again, she doesn't get to complain when she asked for all of this. She acknowledges that she asked for this, and yet she's still upset when it happened. Josh then apologizes for having stabbed her mattress, but says that he's already ordered her a new one anyway, that her old one is too small for them. Allie gets randomly overwhelmed with all this stuff he's doing to try and prove that they're in a romantic relationship. As if the key to a healthy romance is calling your pet our child and buying a new mattress without asking. Said nobody! Ever! She then starts to talk about how Josh had been there for her, filling in the gaps where her previous relationships had failed. What had Josh done? Watched me on shift and said, I'm willing to let me out of his sight even when I asked for space. Ah yes, the top tier marker of a healthy relationship. Said nobody! Ever! After a bit more musing, Allie disrobes, intent on doing what he'd asked. Josh then takes out a wipe and cleans down the handle, as if that's the part that anybody would be worried about. However, Allie asks to kiss him, so he puts a blindfold on her instead, and then handcuffs her to the bed. The entire thing is really getting her going. However, we need to spend an entire page of them discussing how much that she's turned on. We get it. Please move on. He then uses his tongue on her cat, and I'm not talking about Fred. He then unlocks the handcuffs and guides her back to the knife. The entire thing is bizarre, and not in a good way. I don't mean to insult anybody if this is your thing. All I'm simply asking is, why? As she's doing that, he sticks a finger up her back door, tells her that he's going to take her there too. After she arrives, she starts to cry, which obviously makes Josh panic. He picks her up and refuses to put her down as he searches for the key to the handcuffs. I'm sorry, did the narration seriously say that he didn't have the handcuff key? How freaking unsafe could you possibly be? You have it be in an easy access location where both can quickly grab it if something were to happen. I'm not even interested in this sort of thing, but even I know this much. It's shitty authors like this who are the reason why so many people get hurt doing stuff like this. I'm not even sorry for calling the author out on her uneducated bullshit. Allie expresses how upset she is that she's upset, but Josh encourages her to let it all out. And I have to say, Christian Grey could and would never. He'd probably hit Anna if she started to cry in bed after. However, this tumbles Allie down about thoughts of how closed off she's been about life ever since her parents died. Her father passed from a heart attack not long after her mom died, and she emotionally shut down to try and protect herself, which I suppose is understandable. But the problem is that you're eventually supposed to open yourself back up again after a point. So yeah, super unhealthy. She starts to think about her mom, and I once watched her face down an attempted mugger by reaching under her purse and yelling, I see your knife and raise you a gun, motherfucker! He'd taken off running, and she chuckled as I looked on in horror. There was no gun in her purse. What's this? An actual chuckle? I think I need to sit down. Allie pulls her blindfold off, only to be disappointed that he put his mask back on. She asks if he arrived, which he admitted that he did with only putting a finger into her back door. He then promises her that the main attraction will be coming soon, but for now he wants to take her first so that he can put her to bed. She asks him to stay, and he agrees. After he helps her into her pajamas, he starts to have an argument with Fred the cat. Can we not? But then Allie gets out of bed when Josh asks if she wants eggs and bacon again, because she reported to the readers earlier that the bacon was undercooked and that there were shells still in the eggs. She's not going to let him cook for her ever again. Times left in this chapter, 1. Total laughs in this book, 1. For all of you people out there implying that I don't know how to laugh, there was actually a singular funny moment. Granted, it had nothing to do with Josh or even Allie, but still, this book was so devoid of humor that I'll take anything that I can get. Even if it was a little chuckle instead of an outright laugh, I'll still count it. Chapter 16. Josh wakes up to his mess having slid sideways in his sleep. He panics for a moment, having forgotten about it, but Allie helps him to fix it. Then we have to discuss the differences between a balaclava and a balaclava. Why? Why was this necessary? Josh's phone starts to go off and he panics because that specific alarm is for Allie's back door. He checks the cameras and finds that somebody put something over it to block the view. He tells Allie to stay put and asks where her gun is. However, she's having none of his sexist claptrap and follows him from the room. Josh is like, "You're a strong woman, but let me take care of this, okay?" They then proceed to make out, while Allie's apartment is being broken into. Why? What is happening? Josh eventually pulls away and goes into the living room. He eventually undoes the deadbolt so that the other guy won't break down Allie's door, but right as the guy comes in and Josh knocks him out, Allie comes into the room with her gun pointed at the guy. Allie asks that Josh pull the mask off, and it's revealed to be Brad, the creepy alleged rapist from the hospital. "Girl, shoot him! The dude was breaking into your home, where you live alone. Not to mention the fact that this is not even 24 hours after he threatened you in the hospital, in front of 2 other nurses and hospital security, who all knew what a huge problem Brad was. No jury would convict you." However, Josh reminds her that guns are loud, and it would alert the neighbors, so Allie suggests beating him until he stops moving, and then using her connection to the hospital to hide the body, which, yes, let's go with that option instead. But Josh makes her think things through. He points to the bag Brad has, which might have a phone, and phones can be traced, so Josh goes to the bag, which looks like a serial killer kit. Josh obviously has first-hand knowledge of the kind of guy that Brad is, if only because Josh's father was cut from the same cloth. Allie is upset when she realizes that Brad had broken in with the intention to rape and murder her. However, Josh can't stop thinking that he's the opposite side of the same coin as Brad, that he'd also broken into Allie's home with the intention of having sex with her, only he obviously wanted to keep her alive so they could be together forever. And he kind of starts to spiral a little over the entire thing, which, buddy, you should have thought about all of this before you did it. Mercifully, this is short because the issue at hand is more than a little pressing. Josh says that they should tie Brad up and take him to the home of his latest victim. There, her family will take care of the rest. And it's not like Brad could really say anything in his defense, seeing as how he was breaking into a woman's home with a bag full of chloroform, a knife, and trash bags. Allie thanks Josh for having talked her off that ledge, but Josh apologizes for having done the same thing to her. She says that it's no problem because obviously the vibes were totally different between the two of them. Ugh, I hate it here. "It was the snacks, wasn't it?" She huffed out a laugh. "What can I say? I'm a sucker for homemade trail mix." "Girl, what? Don't drop your pants simply because a guy broke into your house and offered you a peanut." Josh then teaches Allie how to tie a proper knot as they tie Brad up using his own rope. Allie is freaked out by the things she finds in Brad's bag and is terrified over what it means. Josh then uses his laptop to find out that Brad's phone is still at his house. The GPS on his car was disabled, which means that it's probably nearby, but probably far enough away that when Brad is discovered, the location of the car won't point back to Allie if Josh had to guess. He then tries to convince Allie to stay behind while he goes to drop Brad off, but Allie says no, that she's already in too deep at this point. That Fred only liked me because cats were sociopaths and he recognized one of his own. I thought that the author was a cat person, but now I'm completely convinced she's never spent any real time with a cat in her life. And then, despite the fact that they have a man hogtied in the living room, they're like, "I'm turned on. Are you turned on right now? Why? Why would you write this?" They eventually get Brad into a large bag and then take him out to Allie's car, where they drive him to the house of his most recent victim. However, when they get there, Allie chides Josh for having put the tape over Brad's mouth and nose. And, well, what happens when people can't breathe? That's right, they die, Josh! Josh is so horrified by the sight of Brad's dead face that he runs into the bushes and pukes. Allie can only comment that she was right about who the mysterious masked man was, which makes Josh laugh while he's puking. Again, gross out humor is never it. But now they have to get rid of the body. Times left in this chapter, 0. Total laughs this book, 1. Thanks for listening to my book Snark on YouTube. New videos are up every Monday, but stick around because I sometimes drop random videos on other days too. Just as a reminder, even if you can't financially support me, there are other ways to help me out. The first is watching this video as well as all my other videos. It's important to like and subscribe. Finally, you can share this video with all of your friends so that they can help as well. If you're already caught up with all of my videos, you can go to Tumblr for my main book. Snark's always free and updated every morning. The only added to Patreon is to become a member without paying. You'll get access to the same things on Tumblr, but on Patreon. Supporters can have access to so many more book Snarks starting at $1 a month. Also new is a 1-week free Patreon trial, so be sure to check that out. Special thanks to Dawn, Phoebe, and Nikki for supporting me on Patreon already. If you want to hear your name in my video next week, either support me on Patreon or make a one-time donation. Do you like my Snark so much that you want me to snark your writing? I do that too. For just $6 per chapter, I will tell you how awful that your writing is. But not to worry if you feel like you couldn't take the criticism. I also offer regular book editing as well, just $10 per chapter. You can contact me on any of my social media platforms if you have further questions. If you want to read some of the things that I've written, you can purchase my works on Amazon. I have a slew of spicy short stories and 2 full-length novels. I also frequently run flash sales on my stories, and if you don't follow me on any social media, you might want to do so just so you can know when I might be offering things for free. Links for everything will be posted below. See you next week, guys!